also is a little outdated, very high use space. So looking at new flooring, lighting, soundproofing, as well as improvements to instrument and musical storage, or material storage. So let me show you a couple pictures of the auditorium. This is the picture. Let me see if I can get this to work here. There we go. This is, I believe, damage to the roof, water damage from 15 or 20 years ago. This is just cracked and peeling paint. If you had this at your house, you'd be embarrassed. The fact is that this is a huge underutilized space in a school that has, potentially will have space issues, and it's a shame to not really, utilize it. This here is mold. There's also asbestos that's contained, but needs to be abated. These chairs are mostly broken and cracked. And here, more images of cracked and peeling. So looking at an auditorium renovation with the stage right here, seats right here, raised platform so that everyone can can see clearly from their seats. In terms of the high school and the music suite, again, outdated, kind of pieces kind of falling apart. The pictures speak for themselves. The flooring really just needs to be updated, and really, just an overhaul to the music suite, because it is heavily used, and if it's not done now, it's not going to get better by itself. So let's talk about the process and the timeline. So as Doug mentioned, we've put a lot of time and effort into this. From November 2017 through September, there was a committee that met, discussed the scope of work. In September, maybe in August, the board started having public discussions at every board meeting, literally every board meeting, to flesh through the bond scope of work. January 7th, at our last board meeting, we voted on what's now on the ballot, and there's a 45-day time period before you can actually have the vote. So we've set the vote for February 28th, Thursday. The vote is from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. the Cochran Gym. And right now we're in the process of doing information sessions. This is the first. We're doing another one on February 6th. We're also going to be talking at different PTSA meetings. If there's another group that wants to learn more about it, let us know. Happy to join. February 28th is the vote, and if it passes, then from March to November, about 6 to 9 months, there's a preparation of construction documents that the architects will do, and then in November, we submit the documents to SED, State Education Department, for a building permit. The reason that it was important to do a vote in the February timeframe is because to move forward with construction starting in summer of 2020, you can see that these permit processes take a long time. It takes about 9 to 12 months. And if you miss that window, then we're really waiting till the summer of 2021, because for a lot of the work, you can't do it while kids are in school. There is some work that we're going to be able to do while kids are in school, but for much of the work, it needs to be done in the summertime. So in January of 2020, we'll start bidding and awarding contracts. Why do we do it in January? We want the best prices. The fact is, if in January contractors don't have their summer schedules locked down, so they're willing to to give you decent deals because they want to lock in work. By March, April, May, they have their work. They're not going to give you a good deal. They're going to jack their prices up, and we want to make sure that we're bidding and awarding in January and February. And then in April into the summer of 2020, we can start the work, and then most of it will be ready for the fall of 2021 school year. So why now? And I think we've kind of laid out what the problem we're trying to solve is. Schools in disrepair. There's a space issue. Interest rates are low. everyone knows that the rates are rising. You know, they're probably not going to go back down in the near term. So let's take advantage of the fact that interest rates are still relatively low in you know, historically. And also, as I mentioned, there's 42.4% of this bond that's state aidable. There's no guarantees. They can change that at any time. So you're basically looking at you know, giving up the opportunity to you know, really have 42 cents on the dollar paid for. What it really comes down to is you know, we have these space issues. It's been 20 years since we've touched the interior of our buildings and done major work on the interior. You know, that has an effect on the learning environment. It has effect on the teachers. It has effect on the community. And we're looking to, you know, not overspend or overinvest, just invest what probably should have been invested in the past. So with that, we can open it up to questions.
You've mentioned that the average increase will be about $450-something. How do you factor in the state aid into that amount? I mean, you've got the bond is like $18 million. How do you account for the state aid?
The state aid is factored into that amount. It would have been higher had it not been.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
What demographic projections are you using for enrollment at Hillside? I'm going to germinate it. I'm wondering about the demographic projections you've used needing more space at Hillside, because as I understand it, I mean, we've been here a long time, enrollments were sometimes low, and there was other, you know, left, I don't know whether to say extra space, or sometimes higher, and some of that need was met by moving grades between Hillside and Farragut. I mean, are those kinds of strategies still used, and are you projecting a steady linear increase in enrollment at Hillside?
So the way, currently we're experiencing that space issue currently, and we don't believe that'll be the case, at least for the foreseeable 5-year future. But what we did, what I did look at, and which we do have, there is a way to calculate out a demographic study, and it's done by using the live birth rates that have been, that the town has experienced, and then factored with home sales and the growth you've experienced. And based upon that, those factors, it is projecting that not only will the enrollment continue to rise, not significantly, but it'll steadily kind of keep the incoming cohorts of students we've been experiencing. So it doesn't, at least that information doesn't suggest that the enrollment will be going down in the very 5 to 10 year future. That being said, I think Jeremy had alluded to before, there have been people that suggested that the addition was not large enough. And I think part of that, you know, rationale is also to not overbuild also, because right now you could almost make an argument that we could add 6 classrooms, because there's been talk of adding additional science classrooms and things such as that. But I think the concern would be you don't want to overbuild at this point also, based on your concern about having, you know, overbuilding for current needs. Now, in terms of years ago, the 5th grade was moved to the Farragut Middle School, and as Jeremy had mentioned, we also are fairly tight at the middle school and the high school also. It's a little bit different because they share classrooms with the departments. It's a little different the way classrooms are shared. But again, there's not an abundance of space. If anything, we would love to have a little bit more space in the other building as well. So that wouldn't be a possibility. Excuse me? You mean the actual number, or about, they range in Hillside. I think the lowest cohort may be like 112 up to about 140. And our current 3rd grade is about 140 students. And then the entire enrollment at Hillside is about 643. But what Jeremy also mentioned, that again, things that have also impacted the space at Hillside, 10 or 15 years ago, some of the special education program that currently exists at Hillside did not exist. So that generated a need for additional space. There's at least 3 or 4 classrooms that 10 years ago were not needed there. I think as the district has committed to, building programming in the schools to have as many of our students stay in district, that it does require additional space. So that's also kind of a piece of it that isn't as obvious when you just look at the enrollment number.
I had a question about repurposing space in 2 locations. One, my understanding is that as you move from the existing cafeteria into the multipurpose space in the new space at Hillside, then you can build your learning center in the existing cafeteria space, including the library. So the current library space gets repurposed at that point, and I was wondering if we could elaborate on that a little bit. And secondarily, when you rework the middle school auditorium, I'm a little puzzled. At one point, I thought the auditorium was going to go away and the whole space was going to be repurposed, but it looks like the auditorium survives. And is that reduced in some scale so that there is some additional repurposing of that space? So both of those areas I'd like to hear more about.
Sure. So as far as Hillside, the existing the existing library will be repurposed, and the net gain will be 2 additional classrooms. So I think that's when Jeremy on one of the slides, it gave the net additional classroom space, which is 5, because with the addition for new classrooms, one of the classrooms will become a kitchen, part of the new all-purpose space. So we gain 5 new classroom spaces with this additional space by shifting some things around. At Farragut Middle School, as you had mentioned, there had been some earlier designs. We had looked at multiple uses of that space, including converting the space into classrooms, flexible space classrooms. But really, when we again looked at the needs of the building and from building administration, they kept coming back to this need to have a large space to hold assemblies and different things that currently there's no space to do that. So the Farragut Middle School auditorium is going to be the same footprint. We did not scale it back, but it will be used as a learning space as well.
So just for clarification, how many new classrooms would there be at Hillside?
5.
Okay, 5.
I mean 4, but as we talked about, when we look at when you shift things around, it gave us 2 additional classrooms in the existing library that is going to be moved to the Learning Commons.
And then
cafe.
How many of those would be intended for general ed classrooms?
I think what it allows for is that all of our current programming has a dedicated space, because some things may move around a bit, but we'll be able to. I don't know if this was mentioned earlier. We had come to find out we had quite a few of our existing areas at Hillside are out of compliance with New York State regulations. So it will allow us to get all of our spaces up to code, and also allow to support all of the existing classrooms, special education, and I believe we'll have about 1 classroom, I think, left over.
And, can I just expand on that? Because I know this has been very confusing, and I actually sat with Maureen and Joe to really understand how much space we're getting and how it's used. So my understanding is we're getting 5 classrooms worth of space. But just to digress for a moment, we have 9 small rooms in Hillside that are used for small, one-on-one, one-on-two spaces for special education, ENL. Those, we were told, were not in compliance. To bring them into compliance, the designs require more space, maybe to include a window or something else. So a good deal of that space is going to correct those 9 small classrooms. So in terms of how many actual classrooms, like say we need another first grade, how many of those we're going to get, I think the answer is between 2 and 3. So the way that Joe and Maureen said is, It's being built for our needs as of right now. So currently, we have Spanish on a cart. So if this plan were finished today, we would have Spanish in a classroom, we'd have music in a classroom, we'd have 6 sections, and that's what we have. If we need to grow another section, we would not have room under this plan. That's correct, right?
Right, yeah, I believe.
Okay.
I think that's clear, right? Yeah. And okay.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just asking. I have a child in the 3rd grade, which I know is the biggest grade at Hillside, and it's my understanding, and I'm not sure about this, that it looks like it might have to even have a 7th. There are currently 6 sections, and there might have to be a 7th section next year. And I'm just imagining that, looking at the numbers that were presented tonight, and the rate at which the population at Hillside is growing, this doesn't look like enough. It just doesn't, to me. I understand how dicey that is, and I understand the delicate balance here, but I'm just saying it doesn't look like enough.
Yeah, I can share just a couple thoughts on that. I think it was a struggle for the board to figure out how to. I can speak for myself personally that when I spoke with people around town, I spoke with people that said, "I'm not sure why you're not putting $25 million or $30 million bond on the table, because we need that." And then I spoke to some people that said, "I'm not sure why we're spending any money. I don't think that, I think that my taxes have gone up tremendously." And that was a real tension and a struggle that we had to wrestle with as a board. And if I had the bond I would really want, I probably would have said 6 classrooms and the auditorium and added those extra 2 classrooms. That put us at probably $21 million. And we had a conversation as a board that said, piercing $20 million is going to have a psychological effect on the ability to pass the bond. And it's going to put some people in a very difficult position. And so we said, you know what? It's not perfect. There's going to be some fixed costs involved if we 4, 5, 10 years from now, whenever, decide we want to add an extra couple classrooms. So then the question on the table is, well, why not just add classrooms and not add the multi-use space? And to me, if you've got a school that's got 643 kids in it, the size of that cafeteria doesn't really work. If you've got a 7-section 3rd grade for 4th grade, for example, and you're trying to fit all those kids in the middle of a K through 2 area where children are trying to learn, that has its own problems also. So I think the takeaway here is there's no easy answers, and there was no simple way to do this. But to me, from a space planning perspective, I think if we parse out any individual piece of this, we can point at that and say, hey, that's kind of a problem. But I think if you take the whole thing as a space planning problem and you layer on top of that the desire to keep taxes low, I think we made some compromises. And I think that those compromises, while maybe not perfect for everyone, are something that can try to thread the needle for the variety of different constituents and stakeholders in this town. And so I feel very strongly about that, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why some of these hard decisions were made.
I understand that this is a compromise, right, between these 2 competing forces, but you very much see that it's a compromise, and it just seems like it's kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit. That's the concern.
Although, one question I have is, were you able to do any research into preschool enrollment in the area, and whether that's increased? Because Hastings is not a large town and there's only a finite number of houses. There's not empty lots. So I agree with Nikki. At the same time, I do have to wonder if there's only so much that the Hillside enrollment can increase, unless there's going to be lots of retired people selling their homes to younger people. Like, was that?
I personally called every preschool executive director in the river towns. So I spoke to about 9 people. It's not an exact science. I can tell you that every one of them said that they've got more kids in their preschool than they've ever had. In fact, Bright Horizons said that in her 20 years, she had never had to add another section, and I can't remember if it was like a 5th section or a 6th section, but she had never had to do that. Now, is everyone at Bright Horizons a Hastings kid? No, but there's a lot. It was a lot of Hastings and Dobbs. So I think you raise a great point. I think you raise a really good point, which is there's space needs. And, you know, we've got to do the best we can as a community that's trying to manage, you know, a variety of people who said, I came to this town and my school taxes were $6,000 and now they're 18. And you know what? I want to live here. And, you know, this is a challenge. And to me, it felt right. 4 classrooms and this cafeteria felt right. Now, I'm speaking for myself. But as someone who looked at this, you know, at many different angles, it felt like the right compromise. And, you know, I will say that one of the reasons why the multi-use space felt like the right thing as well is whether we carve out part of this current multi-use space or whether we, after that's added and that becomes a larger cafeteria, we are then able to carve out another classroom from the current multi-use space, which are all possibilities. That does come at a cost, but it's not the cost of adding another building, it's the cost of adding a wall. And to me, the flex and the adaptability and the optionality that multi-use space gives us a lot of opportunity to move and change as we grow or shrink or adapt. And that really was the compromise in my mind and why I personally voted for this specific referendum.
Hi, I'm a little confused about the multiple multi-use spaces. What's the, so there's the new multi-use space. There's
The other one's the gymnasium.
Yeah, okay. And is that just going to stay as a gymnasium? Is that going to be, I mean, how are all those balanced? I'm just...
Maureen can probably talk to that.
Yeah, the all-purpose room, which is our current all-purpose room, which is our gymnasium, the only modification we're currently looking at there is to use that stage there for potentially an OT-PT suite, which would actually help us potentially gain back another classroom. Because again, that felt with having the ability to have the stage in the new room that we could then regain that space. But other than that, the floor plan would remain the same.
And will it just be used as a gymnasium?
Gymnasium, yeah, as it's currently, and that's all it's currently used for.
Okay.
I want to say thank you to everybody for all your hard work, number one, because I know it's a hard job. My question and concern is the cafeteria for the little ones. I can picture them waiting online to get food. How are you going to work that in with the staff help? And because it takes them a half an hour to get a shoe on at some point, you know.
So in terms of that, I mean, that has been a concern that has been raised. I mean, the one thing that I know just from even visiting some neighboring schools' cafeterias is we're not the only school that has, well, many of the schools, we're one that does not currently have it, but typically an elementary school cafeteria is a scaled-down version. It wouldn't be anywhere in terms of the selection that is offered at the middle school. And the way it would be staffed would be, they understand the time constraints, and I think it may take, just like when the 5th graders move up to the cafeteria, we use staff to kind of help them get directed and just to kind of understand it. But kids are actually pretty good about, pretty quickly getting it. I think that also the cafeteria is we bid that service out as we do in our current middle school, high school cafeteria. So that would also not be our staffing. It would be the other company. It's self-funding, so there's no concern in terms of additional cost. But I think it will be a change, but looking at Springhurst and some of our neighboring districts and kind of modeling ourselves after them, and similar to us, like nobody's getting a big hour lunch period, so I'm hopeful that it can be addressed, and once we get a flow going and with correct staffing, it'll work.
Won't have hot lunches?
They will.
They will.
I mean, again, that would be to be determined, and we would spec the contract based upon like working with parents, because you can kind of offer whatever you want. The food service company would, however we want.
Now, you
whatever
said there's no additional cost to the school because they're
Yeah, so even currently, our cafeteria at the middle school, high school, it's a separate contract. It's an outside company. We bid it out. There's not many, maybe there's a few schools left now in Westchester, but that's pretty much the standard now. So a private food service company runs the program. You're providing them the space, and then they give you a guarantee. They give you a, well, not all, but you bid it so that you're getting some money back to cover kind of the energy cost that's being consumed.
So that money that we pay for that service goes into the normal budget each year?
It's actually a separate, no, there is no budget, there is no budget line, there's nothing in our operational budget for the cafeteria at all. It's a separate contract, the money is accounted for in a separate fund, and it has no general fund budgetary impact. You know, we collect the money and then they charge us a bill, and the money we collect typically, you know, from the cafeteria. And not only, there's a guarantee, so our current contract, which is extremely typical in all schools, they're guaranteeing not only will, even if they lose money, we cannot. So it's structured in that way.
The other thing is, with this bond going through, how is that going to impact the future budget that's going to happen in May?
Well, if this were to be voted and approved now, and based upon the timeline, the money would not be borrowed for at least about a year or so, like 2021, and the first payment on that debt would be 22-23. So that's the budgetary year we were speaking to about that $453 increase, and that would be in addition to what if there was a budgetary increase that year. So that's the first year.
My other question, I'm sorry, and this
No,
is
that's
it,
fine.
because I know it's late and you guys have hard jobs. If something happens to a roof now,
Yes.
and it has to be fixed, how do you manage?
So the district does have some money in reserves, like a savings account, a rainy day fund, and if in fact we had a critical facilities project that we'd have to do, we would have to drain that fund to fund that. But again, that would possibly have an impact on the operational budget, because that would drain any ability to have any other emergency funds available.
Last one.
Yep.
I'm not sure of the revenue that you bring in. I know I should have read what money you take in from outside, like tuitions or
Yep.
whatever. Is there any way that the district is going to try to move in that direction to gain more revenue somehow?
Yeah, so, I mean, so one of the things we do have with, so we do have tuition students for all types of programming in the school, and, I mean, to speak about some of the new programming that we're running at the district in terms of our special education program, we do receive tuition back from schools. Again, it's beneficial because you want to have a certain amount of kids in those classrooms, but it's also helpful in terms of running those programs. So we currently do receive maybe $300,000, and with the ability, like if you had the space, we would be able to continue. I mean, that's currently what we're receiving. If we didn't have space to do it, to run programs specifically to special education in the district, there is not only do we would lose the ability to potentially have students from other districts attend our programs, it's actually more costly as well for our students to not that that's the rationale for us keeping, you know, the program, but I can tell you prior to the programs existing, the cost to send children out was substantially higher.
Now, what about the non-resident employees? Is there anything in the future that they're going to start paying some form of tuition?
No, I mean, not that I know of. I know that's been debated, that's looked at. Yeah, as a district policy, and it's looked at every year.
Another form of revenue.
Yes, that's something, yeah, no,
We're senior citizens, a lot of us, and we're
Right.
paying 10 grand in taxes, and people are getting a free ride. Well, I got a tiny house,
right,
you know, but free rides, and, you know, I think they really should start looking at that.
I hear you.
Anyway.
Thanks, Nance. No, it's fine. Thank you for coming.
I will echo my colleague's word over here that you guys worked hard on this. I want to get out of here right now. But a question, one of the reasons that a lot of us are leaving Hastings, well, primary reason that most people leave Hastings is taxes. And number one of our taxes is our school taxes. Has there been any, and one of the reasons our taxes are so high in Hastings is because there's no businesses that are taxable. And we're hoping at the waterfront that will happen to change, maybe, I guess maybe not in my lifetime, maybe in some of the younger people here. Is there any projection at looking at that? Is there any way to know, even to think about it, or is that all fairy tale land?
I mean, I know that the village is currently working on plans. I think most people don't believe there'll be any development down there for another good 10 years. I know they're looking at
Remediation.
excuse me?
Remediation.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I don't know what'll end up being there. I mean, to your point, that is the one thing in Hastings that we do struggle with. We don't have a lot of businesses and assessments like some of our neighbors, and that's been always the struggle because that really does help offset the property owner's taxes. So that's a challenge. So I'm not quite sure what they're planning on down there. I think we're concerned that there won't be, the hope would be that it wouldn't be too many housing units because that can also, you have to balance that because that can also increase actually costs at the town, any type of residence for services and things. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, we would be...
It's too far out.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be wonderful if there was some type of business to help offset. Thank you.
Can you comment quickly on the solar panels and any kind of net gain? I know that's probably built into the 8 million for the addition, but just any kind of net gain that we're going to get from that?
I mean, in terms of, we'd have to have a solar company come in and do the analysis of how much it would generate. We actually were planning, or had planned to do a solar project a few years ago, and we were all set, and part of the issue we had at Hillside was twofold. The roof that we were planning on putting the solar panels on, which is one of the roofs that we're going to replace now, it would have made it too costly of a proposition. So I think we don't have those numbers as of yet, but in addition, we're optimistic that in addition to the addition having solar panels, we'll be able now to also do the other parts that we had hoped to do earlier. So I think, I can't remember the exact numbers, but as solar in certain areas on the building wasn't going to work, so I'd have to come back and get that information.
Maureen, can I just ask for a clarification? Sure. Is the cost of the solar panels included in the cost of the bond? I heard you mention that, and I didn't recall that. I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, it would be part of the larger solar proposal. I think that's how they're assuming it's like a net, just like the lighting project we're doing. It would not be a cost because we would be getting those solar panels as part of the larger project.
So it's not part of the 8.3 plus million?
No.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes. Sorry.
Or 18 plus.
Yeah, but I guess having the additional space would help actually make the entire project work, because the last time, even with one of the sides, the cost, it had to have a certain amount of square footage to make it work with the new roof in the building, but it would be a separate contract. No, I mean, they're a net zero contract typically, so when you bid it out, the solar company provides the panels and then you get the savings.
So there was mention that one of the reasons to do this now is because interest rates are historically low. I was wondering if someone could put in context, how low are they? And if this weren't to pass and then a few years go by and then we realize things are really in disrepair and we need to do this again, how much more expensive it would be?
Oh, yeah. Well, you want to start? Yeah, sure. I mean, there's two things that would make the project more costly. One of it would be the interest rates, and to Jeremy's point, they are definitely at a historic low compared to debt we had issued years ago. It was like 8%, 9% you're borrowing at. So in addition to capitalizing on that, even seeing some of the fluctuation in the markets recently has increased, we're seeing an increase in what we're projecting now, but also there's the escalation cost of doing construction. So I think both of those numbers, if you factor both of them in, it could be, higher than a 10% increase, well, depending upon when you would be able to do it.
Currently, we budget about 4% per year for escalation, so.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, that fan is blowing, right? Mm-hmm.
Currently, we budget in construction projects 4% per year for escalation. That's what we've been seeing for the last couple of years. So depending on how many years out, 4, 8, 12%.
Sorry to bother you once again. I remember about, I think it was 6 years ago, they had, I think it was called Excel money that the district was given. Was that like somebody had to write a grant to get that money?
No, so the state, some years back, there's been different initiatives at the state where they just give you an allocation. So every district, there wasn't a grant funded proposition. Every district, similar to the Smart Schools Bond, was allocated from the state X amount of dollars. And then you were able to, it had to fall under certain categories of work had to be done under that money. For us, I believe we did I remember we did the infrastructure of the technology closets. Some of it is sometimes like targeted to certain types of projects.
Yeah. So there's no way that the district can write grants to fund any more of these jobs that you have in the bond?
There's nothing right now that would be available per se for some of the work we're doing currently. I think other than the fact that the state does, in fact, reimburse us the 42% on the dollars that we're, and that is why it is hard, because sometimes doing the in-district work can, obviously smaller scale. Our crew is wonderful, but some of the jobs would be, you need roofing and things like that. You have to bring in, actual roofers. Doing it though through a bond, the one thing as opposed to trying to do it piecemeal in your regular budget is that then you don't get that money back. So I think that's kind of, and although I know it's a lot of money, it does give you an ability to pay it over like a longer course, like amortize it a bit.
Very happy to see all the security that's going to get fixed. That's very important.
Well, the PA system is not.
The PA system. Thank you.
You're welcome.
At what point is the interest rate locked in? At what point in the process? And then also the 42.4%, when is that locked? And I know we're trying to get this voted on quickly, right. So can we do it quicker, and can we lock it in?
Yeah, well, quickly? I think with the bond rate, so what we showed you tonight, so working with our financial advisors, we tell them the approximate time we believe will be in the market borrowing that money. So the interest rate that we're projecting here does, in fact, allow, it's showing an increase, it's showing a higher interest rate than is currently, would be the current rate. So we're hopeful that we've given ourselves, we really try to be conservative, so to make sure that we're putting at the highest rate it could be. If in fact, we see that the Fed after the bond is approved, there is a possibility once you have approval, you could borrow the money earlier. So if we were concerned about the interest rates, maybe like borrowing it 5 or 4 months before, it would more than likely still be in that 2020. So we do have the ability to do that. And occasionally school districts, when they think the rate's coming down, they'll wait, right? So, but I think that is what we would do. And then as far as the state aid rate, I think what Jeremy was alluding to is that is our current rate. I guess sometime in the future it could change, but once you would receive approval for the, and they would give you a commitment to paying you that money, then you'd be good. But I guess part of the rationale for doing the 18 million now is, could that change in 5 or 10 years? That, or sometime in the nearer future, it could. I don't think it's likely. I hope so. It would be likely.
Just make sure you talk so people at home can hear.
And actually, along the lines of that question, Janine, could you please, I'm sorry, just calling you out of the blue, could you tell people about registering and what those dates are, as well as absentee ballots? Because a number of people have asked me about that. Because, just really important, the vote is on February 28th, and we have learned it is happening unless the governor declares a state of emergency. So even if it's a snow day and schools are closed, according to state law, the vote goes on. So absentee ballots obviously are important if you're somebody, who can't get out of the house when the weather is colder. So whatever you can share about registration and absentee ballots would be very helpful.
To vote, you have to be 18 years old. You have to be a resident of Hastings. And within the next few days, I'll post on the district website the application to request an absentee ballot if you're not going to be in town. I have to receive that by the 21st of February so that I can send you a ballot and get it back in time for the vote. So again, you need to be a registered voter, a U.S. citizen. You have to be a U.S. citizen to register to vote. So even if you've been living here 10 years and you're not a U.S. citizen, you cannot register to vote. We will be holding a voter registration on February 21st from 4 to 8 p.m. In the high school lobby. That will allow someone to vote. If you're not a registered voter, that will allow you to register to vote, but only in the school election. So if you want to register to vote for, the upcoming Hastings election for the government officials or anything like that, you need to register through Westchester County Board of Elections, and you can do it online if you want. Yes, if you're a registered voter, you get to vote for the school's bond and election and vote. So it's only if you're not a registered voter here, if you want to do it last minute, you could register to vote just for the school. February 21st from 4 to 8 p.m. in the high school lobby.
And Janine, once the link is up for the absentee ballots, can we send an e-blast to the school community with all this information and have the village reblasted as well?
Sure.
Great.
Anything else? Oh, okay. So, all right. To vote in the school capital bond vote or the school budget or anything like that, right? You need to be a registered voter of Hastings. Oh, on the absentee ballot? I'll be posting them on the website in the next couple days. We'll send out an email with a link. Pardon me? I'll ask the town. I'll ask Hastings. They send out our emails for us when it comes to this. So they'll send it out also. So you'll either get it from our email system or if you signed up for Hastings emails, I'll have them send it out also.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
So I just want to thank everyone for coming out. I know that these are long days, and you've got a lot of places to be, and so I appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you have any questions which come up after you read through the materials or you talk with community members, please feel free to email us at that address. If you haven't seen them yet, there are some mock-ups here in the back. I think all of those were up on the screen here, but there is one poster there. We'll also have those at the school. Some of you may not be into the schools very much, but we'll have those up at each school. And we're having another one February 6th, 6:30, same place. If you know other people that are interested and would like to personally come and hear more. So thank you for your time, and February 28th is the vote. Thank you.
Sticker or something, like we'll get